Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and I've got a bit of a special one for you today. This is one of the two new Soviet Tier 10 destroyers, courtesy of Flamu, who sent me this replay. It's the Nakodka. What the hell's the Nakodka when it's at home? Well, to put it simply, it's one of the two new Tier 10 Soviet destroyers, although of the two new Tier 10 Soviet destroyers, only one is actually a new destroyer. The Nakodka here, despite the change of name, is basically just the existing Soviet Tier 10 destroyer, the Khabarovsk, although there is one very important difference. Now, as you can tell by the work in progress overlay over the video, Wargaming were very insistent that everybody doing preview content of the new Soviet destroyers make it very clear that these are a work in progress, stats are subject and probably are going to change. However, I can't actually see this particular ship changing much, if at all, because there is only one difference between the Nakodka and the Khabarovsk as it currently exists on the live server, and that's in the choice of consumables. You get to make a very interesting choice with the Nakodka. You can choose to have a smokescreen, or you can choose to be the only destroyer in World of Warships that comes with a heal. Right there. Damage repair party. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, bloody hell, Jingles, if I'm in a destroyer, especially a Soviet destroyer that doesn't have a smokescreen, I'm going to need a heal. And, well, there's a certain element of truth in that. The Soviet destroyers are not typically the most stealthy of ships. Japanese and American Tier 10s both have surface detection ranges prior to modifications being installed and fitted, and ooh, something nasty just went wrong with the replay there. Bit of camera clipping, anyway. But they both have surface detection ranges before modifications, and cruise skills are taken into account of 7.56 kilometers. The Soviet Tier 10 destroyers, 10 kilometers. So yeah, you can always count on being spotted by Japanese and American destroyers long before you spot them, unless they do something stupid. On the other hand, if you're playing Soviet destroyers, you're probably used to being spotted long before anybody else anyway. And you're also probably used to this. The second you get spotted, everybody that can see you start shooting at you. You can see that Flamu's running with the improved situational awareness perk, which lets him know exactly how many ships are shooting at him. So far, only 2, which is actually not bad considering that, well, whenever you're testing out one of these brand new upcoming ships, there's a certain amount of, oh my god, I have to sink the new ship syndrome going on. And, well, if you're Flamu and you're playing World of Warships, there's also a certain amount of, oh my god, I have to sink Flamu going on. Because he is an exceptionally good player, and the sooner you can knock him out, the better for your team. Oh, here it comes. The Yugomo has been spotted. He's done a substantial amount of damage to the Moskva already. He's hit the Yugomo and knocked out his engine. So the Yugomo's in trouble, and I think he knows it. I mean, you really don't want to be getting into a gunfight with, well, anything if you're in a Japanese destroyer. With the notable exception of the Akizuki at Tier 8, which is lethal in a gunfight, but that is not an Akizuki. And the Yugomo's just had his engine knocked out again, and Flamu is not the only one shooting at him, so he's popping smoke. But Flamu manages to score more hits just as the Yugomo smokes up. So with the Yugomo no longer detected, and Flamu still manoeuvring heavily, because there are still multiple enemy ships targeting him, he's going to switch back to the Moskva. Now, he's already set 2 fires on the Moskva. The Moskva's put the fires out. And he's just about to set a few more as he keeps up the high explosive spam. I'm not entirely sure what commander build Flamu is running with on the Nakodka here, but I'm pretty sure Demolition Expert is in there somewhere. I mean, he has absolutely no problems setting cruisers on fire in this game. Battleship players are all going, yeah, Crimea River cruisers. How do you like it? No sympathy. Then again, this poor Moskva. I mean, Flamu set 7 fires on this guy now. As fast as this guy puts the fires out, Flamu just sets fresh ones. I think he's burning in 3 places now. And the Moskva's shooting back at him, obviously, but, well, Flamu's keeping the distance. He's making it as hard as possible for this Moskva to actually land a successful hit. Oh, hello. Torpedo bombers. Now he's got the attention of the enemy carrier. Well, I suppose it was only a matter of time. And here they come. Now, the other new Russian Tier 10, the Grozovoy, it would chew these Tier 9 carrier aircraft up and spit them out. But this is not the Grozovoy. And while the AA guns on this thing aren't bad, they're not going to stop a determined strike from even a tier 9 carrier. He has managed to avoid them, however. I think we need some torpedo beats running for this sort of thing. Now, I thought, if you have a look on the map there, you can see the dive bombers circling over there. And there they go, you just caught them at the top right of the screen for a second. Carriers do like to follow up one type of strike with another type of strike, because, for example, if you take the torpedo hit and it causes flooding, you immediately use your repair ability. But them sneaky buggers in the carriers like to have a squadron of dive bombers or two lurking around, just waiting for you to blow your repair so they can hit you with bombs that are going to set you on fire and you can't do anything about it. But it looks like those dive bombers were just being used to keep him spotted. Otherwise they would have attacked, and the enemy carrier is now recalling the bombers. Nevertheless, Flamu is still detected. You can see his surface detection range when he fires the guns on these things is astronomical. 15.5 kilometers. And he's done 55,000 damage so far, 57,000 damage so far, almost all of it to the Moskva. And the Moskva is clinging on with 275 health. Flamu doesn't get a kill, but his division mate, Evo Side and the Minotaur, does. And that's when the Yugamo decides to make an appearance again. And don't check your email, that was mine, not yours. I really need to switch off my, my email client when I'm recording these videos. The Yugamo, getting shot at by an Akodka and a Minotaur, very wisely decides to smoke up and make his escape. Or possibly it was because Evo Side was attracting far too much attention in his Minotaur and he smoked up and he's lost sight of the Yugamo. Either way, both teams are now down one ship. The enemy team have lost a Moskva, Flamu's team have lost one destroyer, but the enemy team are still ahead on points because they are the only team that so far has managed to control any of the epicenter rings. More dive bombers spotted. Just in case they're heading this way to investigate the smokescreen. I think Flamu's going to stay as close as possible to the Minotaur's anti-aircraft firepower. He has of course been detected, and the second he gets detected, multiple ships start targeting him. But if you can't see the funny side of getting shot at, then you shouldn't have joined the Russian Navy. Now it's the North Carolina's turn. We're going to see how well North Carolina burns. Oh, hang on a second. There's that Yugamo again. Now you see him, now you don't. Wonder how many people are... It's a hard life in a destroyer, isn't it? Everybody sees you, they all want a piece of your ass. Oh, torpedoes incoming. Cue the torpedo beat. I am now, of course, contractually obliged to play torpedo bit music anytime something like that happens in World of Warships. It's not my fault, I don't make the rules. ATSF started it, I just work here. Oh, more torpedoes incoming. Nah, it's not worth the torpedo beat. Those aren't even coming close. The Atago's taken a bit of a battering, but it looks like Flamu was actually taking his first well, not really a substantial hit. He's lost the torpedo launcher and he's taken some damage. Although he has used his heal for the first time to recover some of the damage that he'd taken. And there's more fire coming in from the Atago, and bang. Now that was a bigger hit, and his engine's been knocked out. So, at what point, if at all, are you going to use the repair? Because remember, you don't have a smokescreen to hide from these guys. And at the moment, there's only really one ship targeting him, and I'm pretty sure it's the Atago over there that he lost sight of momentarily, but he's used the repair. The Atago's already demonstrated he knows how to hit a target at range, especially one that's manoeuvring quickly. So let's not make things any easier for him. He's keeping the fire up, driving the Atago off, and bollocks, they've just lost another two ships. The scores are now 330 to 745. The enemy team still control the central zone of the epicenter and they're contesting the middle zone as well. And Flamu is now the only destroyer left on his team. Now, if he wasn't in an Akodka or something Russian, if he was in a Gearing or a Shimakaze or even a Fletcher, he could do something about that. He could get in there and contest the central ring, but he's not. He's in a Soviet destroyer, and they're going to see him coming from a mile away. So instead, he keeps the fire up on the Atago, spreading the fire between the Atago and the Yugamo over there, who has been spotted once again. He's knocked out the Atago's steering. He's on fire. Come on. Yes, he's finished him off. Unfortunately, let's not celebrate because that's just the team's second kill, and they're now down 5 ships. The scores are 245 to 817. Flamu's shooting up the North Carolina now, but you can see some incoming fire there. He is being targeted by one ship. He's managed to set the North Carolina on fire. No big surprise there. Not entirely sure who's shooting at him. Whoever's doing it is shooting at him from stealth. It's not the North Carolina. In fact, I don't think the North Carolina ever targets him, despite obviously getting pissed off by this incessant rain of high explosive spam coming in. It's possibly the stealthed up Yugumo, or it could be the Fletcher. And that's when he takes hits from the left-hand side. And, oh crap, a Chapayev. Okay, that's a different matter entirely. Chapayev, of course, has the radar consumable. Not that it matters in this ship, because he doesn't have smoke. Anyway, load the armor-piercing, broadside Chapayev. Look at the volume of fire this thing is capable of putting out. 4 turrets, each with 2 130mm guns, which can each do 1600 high explosive damage, or 2600 armor-piercing damage. And oh crap, here come the dive bombers. And he is hit, and his engine is out, and he's on fire. Doesn't burn the damage control immediately, waits to see whether there's going to be a follow-up strike. There isn't. Uses the damage control, puts the fire out, repairs his engine, and continues the fire on the North Carolina, setting him on fire once again. And you'll note that with the Moskva and the Atago dealt with, and also because it's getting far too hot, skirting around the outskirts of the zone there, at one point there were 3 different ships shooting at him, including a Chapayev, and he set the North Carolina on fire again. But anyway, as I was saying, Flamu's putting some solid cover between himself and his tormentors, and he and his clanmate Evotide, they're also from Omni, in the Minotaur, are trying to do something about this monstrous points lead that the enemy team have. They're more than 600 points ahead. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, they lose another ship. The scores are now 185 to 917. Torpedoes spotted ahead. No immediate threat. The friendly carrier's aircraft spotted them well in advance. Could be the Fletcher over there behind the island. Could also be the Shimakaze, however, keeping a torpedo launcher in reserve, and it is the Fletcher. Right, they need to sink some of these destroyers. Well, they need to sink some of anything. They're now contesting the central zone. In fact, they're capping the central zone, which means that wherever the Shimakaze is, he's definitely not in this zone with them. You can see the capture progress going on there at the bottom of the screen. And they've been joined in the central ring by their other clanmate, Potent, in the Yamato. There are now 3 ships targeting and shooting at Flamu. The Fletcher, Vanamagi, and there's a Bismarck just joined the party. Flamu switches to the Bismarck with a high explosive, but he gets some shatters on the Bismarck's armour. And it's the Amagi, however, who's going to score a couple of big hits right after Flamu's just finished using his heal, which was lucky, otherwise he would have been dead, and shaves 9,000 of his remaining health off. He now has just under 6,000 health, and he's got 1 heal available, but it isn't going to be available for another minute. He selects his torpedoes. The Nakodka does have upgraded torpedoes that do a hell of a lot more damage, but only have a 6-kilometer range. He's using the 10-kilometer range torpedoes, and that's when the Bismarck does something very unusual right after he sets him on fire again. He smokes up. Where did he go? The Fletcher's given him a smokescreen. At least I think it was the Fletcher. And that's when Flamu gets hit and set on fire again. But they have at least captured the central zone. And right now there are 5 different ships shooting at Flamu, and he's got just over 4,400 health remaining. Potent in the Yamato is begging their carrier to please, please, please spot those enemy destroyers. And that's when the wall of skill appears through the gap in the islands. I think we know where the Shimakaze is now. And Flamu takes another hit and is set on fire, and his engine is knocked out, and his repair is on cooldown. And even more torpedoes coming in through the smokescreen over there, fired by the Yugumo. Flamu, meanwhile, is going to have to use that heal the second it comes off cooldown. There it is. And that's going to give him a little buffer of health against the damage that the fire's causing, long enough. Oh, and his torpedoes, well, at least one of them has hit the Bismarck. And now his repair is back up. Torpedoes have missed. Now he can use the repair to put the fire out, get the engine back up and running, and get back into this fight. Now, while all of that was going on, Potent in the Yamato has managed to sink the Yugumo, and Evotide up ahead there in the Minotaur, launching his torpedoes at the Bismarck, has managed to sink the Chapayev. So that's great news for Flamu. The enemy team no longer have any cruisers. Keeping up the fire on the Bismarck, the high explosive, again obviously attempting to do as much damage as possible and set him on fire. The Bismarck no longer taking flooding damage, so any fire damage that hits is, well, he just got deleted by the Yamato, so okay, fair enough. Now, you might have noticed that there is a substantial amount of drama going on in chat. Potent in the Yamato there is begging and pleading with the friendly carrier to please, please, please use your aircraft to spot those destroyers. And that's not an unreasonable request given the situation. However, as Flamu is taking this Amagi under fire, I'm just going to switch to the free camera just so you can actually see what the friendly carrier is doing. And to be completely fair to him, he's not exactly doing nothing here. He does kind of have his hands full, trying to keep the team alive and protected from the dive and torpedo bombers. That carrier player has a tough choice to make. He doesn't have unlimited aircraft. He has to use them wisely, and he's using them to protect his team from the dive and torpedo bombers. But the consequences of that are, of course, that Evotide in the Minotaur has just been torpedoed and sunk by an unspotted Fletcher. And if you have a look at the map, the carrier player is trying to do the maximum that he possibly can with the limited resources at his disposal. He's currently sending, now that the sky is no longer full of enemy dive and torpedo bombers, he's sending his dive bombers and his fighters down to the southwest to try to spot that Fletcher, and potentially also the Shimakaze. Meanwhile, Flamu, with 163,000 damage done so far, is having fun with the Amagi. Flamu, stop playing with your food. You'll notice how he consistently tries to work the ship around at one flank and focus his fire on the most extended enemy ship, the one that doesn't have any backup, and in this case it's the Amagi. Meanwhile, the friendly carrier, the Essex, has managed to find and kill the enemy North Carolina with its dive bombers, and his dive bombers are showing a clean pair of heels to the enemy fighter squadron over there, and it looks like he's managed to get all of his dive bombers out without taking any damage. Now, you could argue the case, as Potent is still there in chat, pleading with the carrier to spot those destroyers. You could argue the case that, free of bombs, the dive bombers would make very, very good scouts. And he could be using the dive bombers to spot those destroyers. Although, well, I think we've determined the relative location of the Shimakaze. You saw his shots coming in from the other side of the map over there as he finished off the friendly turpits. So there's now just the three of them left. Potent and the Yamato. Flamu here, who's keeping up the fire on the Amagi and surely has to sink him soon. And the friendly carrier. Potent, meanwhile, he's already got himself a high caliber and a Confederate in the Yamato, and he's just added another kill to the total by finishing off the enemy Montana. Flamu, detected, but mercifully for the moment, for what feels like the first time in this game with nobody actually targeting and shooting at him, still attempting to finish off that Amagi, but he's getting high explosive shatters, and ooh, that's a lot of torpedoes coming in towards the Yamato. And the Shimakaze has been spotted by the Essex's fighters. However, that's a kind of a double-edged sword, because that means the Essex now only has one squadron of fighters to defend Potent in the Yamato from the incoming waves of torpedo bombers. So, well, I guess the lesson here is be careful what you wish for, because you might get it, and if you do, you might not like it, and that is a lot of torpedoes. Flamu has finished off the Amagi, but it's very, very doubtful that Potent is going to survive that torpedo strike. Yep, he's done. There's just the Essex and Flamu left. Flamu has no heals remaining. He has just over 5,000 health, and he has just over 2 minutes in which to somehow make up for that 250-point lead that the enemy team have. On the plus side, the enemy team don't hold any of the capture circles. They're about to finish capping the middle ring to go with the central ring which they hold, but that in and of itself isn't going to be enough. It's not going to bring enough points in fast enough in the time remaining for them to overtake the points lead that the enemy team currently has. And that is when the Essex spots the Shimakaze with his fighters. And for the first and only time in this game, Flamu is in the enviable position of getting eyes onto a Japanese destroyer long before the Japanese destroyer spots him. And he's got all of his guns firing. That's a lot of guns. That's 8 of them, 130mm. And no Shimakaze in his right mind wants to get involved in a gunfight with a Soviet destroyer. I mean, the Shimakaze's guns aren't terrible. They fire every 6 seconds, but it's only got 6 of them, and at that angle he can only fire 2 of them. They take forever to turn. This is not a fight he's likely to win, and yet he has managed to get a lucky hit, and he has knocked out Flamu's engine, and now the Fletcher's shooting at him as well. So yeah, screw this. Fix the engine, keep moving, keep firing. Shimakaze has turned, obviously realises he's doomed. He's trying to get his torpedoes away. Flamu set him on fire. Flamu finishes him off, and with the friendly aircraft overhead, he got plenty of warning that those torpedoes were on the way, and the Fletcher has gone behind the island, so he can no longer shoot at him. Flamu checks the position of the incoming torpedoes, pops his own off between the gap in case the Fletcher pops out to try to finish him off. Oh, torpedo beat incoming. Well, it wasn't really that close. But look at the timer. Less than 50 seconds of this match left and the enemy team are still ahead by 100 points. The Essex has the Fletcher spotted with his fighters, but he can't damage the Fletcher with his fighters, and he's scrambled strike aircraft, but they're too far away to get there in the time remaining. So all that Fletcher has to do to win this game is keep that island between himself and Flamu and not come out and fight. And so the Fletcher comes out to fight. Still, he's just as likely to sink Flamu as Flamu is to sink him. But Flamu may as well go for it. He's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. The Fletcher, by comparison, has everything to lose here. With 4 seconds to go, the enemy team still have a 30-point lead, and then Flamu sinks the Fletcher in the literal last second of the game, and appropriately enough, the scores flip, and Flamu wins with 666 points. I don't think I've ever seen a closer result in World of Warships, and unsurprisingly it comes at the hands of Flamu. He's pretty good at this game. You can see why he's in Omni. Not a huge amount new to see about this allegedly new Soviet Tier 10 destroyer, however. It's essentially just the Khabarovsk. The only difference being that it's got a new name, and you get the choice of using a heel rather than a smokescreen consumable. I would recommend for captains with balls of steel only, but yes, Flamu certainly appears to have all of those boxes checked. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.